5 tricks to helping you fill your high converting webinar. Hey, I'm Scott Bedford, and today is part 2 of a 2-part series where I talk about webinars. If you missed the last one, go back and listen to 5 tricks for creating a high converting webinar. Now I'm going to talk about how to fill it. In this episode, I'm going to talk about I'm going to give you tricks for how to increase your open rate by 50%, how to get more people to see your social media posts, and why you should be inviting your past clients to your webinars, even if you don't think they're interested. I'm telling you, this is a massive, massive missed opportunity. All right, before we jump into that, as I said, I'm Scott Beckford. This is the Auto Mortgage Brokering Podcast, the podcast designed for mortgage brokers, where we share tactical tips that you can apply to your business. Before I jump into this episode, I want to give a shout out to our title sponsor, Finmo. Finmo is a Canadian mortgage application, document collection, submission platform designed specifically for Canadian borrowers. It's got some super cool features. One of them being, it's really simple. And what I like is they got smart docs. So as your client's filling out the application, it automatically knows what documents your client needs and requests them. And you may not realize this, but a lot of times when people fill out our mortgage applications, they actually get the documents and they look at them. And if they have an easy way to send them to you, they'll just send them to you. And we see this over and over again, that clients are actually sending in docs with the app, which saves you time. Another cool thing is they're connected to Lender Spotlight, which has all the rates and guidelines, over 8,000 that you can search. It's very powerful. Check them out at lendesk.com/Finmo and get them to give you a test drive. It's the best way to test this thing out. All right, so let's talk about how to fill your high converting webinar. So at this point, hopefully you've listened to my last episode. And the key now is how do I fill this thing up? You know, Dan Kennedy's a famous marketer. I love this guy. He passed away a little while ago, but still his stuff is out there. And he talks about writing books. And he said, when you write a book, most people think that it's like, oh my gosh, I wrote a book. Like, watch the clients roll in and the money roll in. He's like, no. Writing the book is just the starting gate. You're literally just starting. It's the same with the webinar. Creating a webinar is just the starting. Even if the webinar is killer, it could be a killer webinar, but if you don't promote it, no one's going to see it and it's not going to work. And so it's super important that you actually, so I'm going to share with you 5 tricks for promoting your webinar to help you get more butts in seats, as they say. And just as a side note, I did a webinar one time with the smallest audience I've ever had, which was one person showed up to this webinar. I was at a conference. Maybe it was bad timing. It was a mortgage conference that I had scheduled. So maybe people were at the conference. Anyways, I did the webinar anyway. The one person was on it and they signed up. And so I was like, hey, on the plus side, and because with the software I use, you couldn't tell how many people were on it. They didn't know if there was 100, but there was one, and she signed up for the thing that I had. And I was like, 100% conversion rate, baby. I'm on fire. Anyways, so it doesn't matter how many people show up. You want me to think about this for a second, is that if you had a room full of 20 people or 15, you'd be pretty happy. These are possible customers, 15, 20 people. So, you know, routinely when I do a webinar now, we'll get 150, sometimes 200 people show up to it, which is great, but it wasn't like that when I started. And so it's okay that when you do these webinars and only a small number of people show up, because you can leverage them and there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do on the backside of this as well. All right. So the first thing you should do to promote your webinar is you need to email your list. Yes, your own list. And you need to do it more than once. I see too often that people will send an email to their list and they send it once. It's not enough. They're going to forget. How many emails do you get in a day? Even if you see something you like, and I can prove this beyond the shadow of a doubt. If you go into your inbox, there's stuff that you put into a folder that you intended to read that you're like, oh, that looks really good. Hopefully some of my emails, maybe not, but maybe some of them. You're like, oh, I want to read that later. You drop it somewhere, you never look at it again. And so if you want to get more people to show up, you have to send more than one email to the same thing. I will always send at least 3 to 4, and I'll promote them. I usually will promote them not longer than 7 to 10 days before, only because I find that professionals, the longer it is, the more likely they are not to show up because they get busy. And so they don't know what they're going to be doing in 2 weeks. Probably the same for your clients. If you're doing a client-facing webinar, I would not make the dates too far. I like about 10 days of promotion time for each webinar is all I need. And I'll probably send one day 1, day 7, increase frequency. And some email providers, so I use Active Campaign, there's a bunch of different ones. They have this really cool feature called Resend. And so this will double your open rate. What you do is you click on Resend and they'll say, hey, do you want to resend to all the people who didn't open the last email? And I'm like, heck yeah. And I just changed the subject line because maybe the subject line just didn't catch their eye, right? Again, they probably didn't see the first email. I changed the subject line, hit resend. If you're on my email list, you probably now I'm opening the kimono and telling you what I'm doing, but that's what I do. I'll literally resend the same email with a different subject line, and I'll get more people registered. So see the second time than the first, and I don't have to write more than one email to get people to register for the thing I'm doing. So you have to send emails to your list, and you need to send multiple emails. That's the first. The second is I would encourage you to phone clients in your network and personally invite them. And if you have an assistant, get your assistant to do it. And you may be thinking, you know what my clients are going to want to come to this. Like, let's say you've got, you're doing a webinar on first time buyers and you got people that are not first time buyers. Call them anyway. You always want an excuse to talk to people, right? We're always like, I don't know what to say if I call them. Call them and invite them. Say, hey, and I got this from Bernadette Laxamana, who's she's an amazing mortgage broker and crushes when she does events. She fills them and they phone and invite everybody. And when they do that, they get way more invites. Because here's what happens when you invite them and say, you know what, not me, but my son is thinking about buying a house, or I got a cousin or a friend. I'm going to send them to your webinar. And so what happens is she's calling to invite, which is a reason to have a conversation with the person about what's going on with them. But it's also an opportunity for them to send people to your webinar as well. And so they're not going to do that as likely with an email, or hardly at all, but they will do it with a phone call. And it's a 5-minute phone call. And if you're brand new and you don't have a lot of clients, you have time. You just got to make the time to do it. And if you're experienced, get someone on your team to do it. Get one of your, admin people to make calls and start inviting people. And you can just call them up and say, hey, you know what? Just let you know we're doing, it doesn't matter if they're not a first time buyer. We're doing a first time buyer webinar on this date. We're going to teach you a bunch of cool things. I know that you're obviously not a first time buyer, but I wanted to extend the invitation anyway. And also, if you know anybody that you think would be useful, that would find this useful, please let me know, and I'll make sure they get an invite. So now I got a reason to talk. I got an invite, and I can increase more butts in seats, as they say with live webinars. So the first is email your list more than once. The second is phone your clients and network and personally invite them. Second is promote on social media. So obviously that's easy. Everybody wants to do that. They post on social media. But here's what the mistake that I see people make is they go, hey, I'm doing a webinar. Here's a link to my thing. And first off, they made the mistake from what I talked about in the previous podcast, which is they got a terrible title. So the title is like first time buyer webinar. Nobody cares. It's like the 5 most expensive mistakes parents make when helping kids buy their home, right? Like number 2 is it costs more than $22,000 on average. They're like, well, okay, if I'm going to be a parent, by the way, like 44% of first time buyers get some help from their parents. And I know there's mortgage brokers out there that go, oh, stay away from people that have parents that are going to co-sign or want to be involved. Listen, if you don't, you're literally cutting off 44% of the market that's going to be getting some help. You are better to lean into that and say, hey, let me talk to your parents, because you can turn them into clients too. You have to sell the parents, obviously, but it's 1,000% worth it because they've got mortgages, very likely. And so if they're going to be in the client's ear, you'd be stupid not to try and build a relationship with them. Sorry, I'll stop ranting with that in a second. So when you promote on social media, though, the mistake I see people make is they put the link. They go, hey, I got a webinar. Click here to register. Yeah, that's okay. But you know what works even better is if you promote your webinar and then you say, hey, comment and I will send you the link. Here's what happens. They're going to say comment, webinar or first time buyer. You see this on social media all the time. All the people that have 20,000 plus followers do this consistently. They could just drop the link, but instead what they do is they say comment, because when you comment, it drives that content back to the top of the algorithm pile, right? And then you DM them. Now you're in their DMs and you can start conversations in there. Plus, so it's even better. If somebody sees my link, clicks on it and goes registers, I'm not in their DMs. I don't get an extra opportunity for me to push the algorithm and get my content to the top of the pile again, which means it's going to be lost. I've always said social media is like a river. It's like this river that's rushing by. You throw your content in, and by the time in the morning, by the time you look, it's gone way down the river. Well, every time somebody comments, it moves it back up to where you are, and it's, oh, cool. And then you reply. And then, by the way, not only do you DM them, but you reply to them. You say, sent, message, whatever. It's like, oh, Facebook algorithm's like, there's a conversation going on here. This must be important. Other people must like this. We should put it in front of more people. You're literally cutting your legs off if you just say you put the link in. I will not put the link. I do this all the time. Podcasts. I'm like, yeah, I got a podcast. Da, 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 da. I'll talk about it. And people, here's the crazy part. People can actually find my podcast pretty damn easy. It's literally on every podcast player, but yet we make it easy for them. They are happy for us to send them a link, which means I am now in their DMs and I've got communication with them on my social. So you got to do that. I might go a little longer than 12 minutes today, but hey, I'm having some fun. So 1, email. 2, phone. Email your list more than once. 2, phone your clients personally, invite them. 3, promote on social media, but do not use links. 3, guerrilla marketing. So there's other stuff. 4, guerrilla marketing. So I've seen people put this in their email signature. So it's kind of like, hey, I got a webinar coming up on this date. Click here to register. Everybody that you're sending messages to could be other industry people, could be real estate agents. I like that idea. Another thing you can do for guerrilla marketing, I'm going to give you a couple of different ones. I'm going to give you 3 different guerrilla marketing ideas. There's hundreds of them. And if you have a good one, send me a message. Maybe I'll turn it into a social media post. So email me, say, hey, Scott, I got an idea for you. I love hearing your ideas. So invite high profile people to attend. So my buddy Dion Begg has done a ton of webinars. And the last one is actually going to leverage the heck out of all these. But he would, if he knew somebody who's a high profile potential referral source, he'd say, why don't you come to my webinar, check it out, and then we can talk about promoting this to your list. So now you've got high profile, centers of influence coming specifically, and you're asking them for feedback and opportunities for them to get in front of their list. So that's another guerrilla tactic. And then, of course, another easy one, if you have a social account, Linktree, you should always have in your Linktree, whatever you're promoting should be at the top of that thing all the time. So that's number 4. And number 5 is, and this one here is the one that will blow all of them. Like, you should do this plus. I left this one for last because it's so dang good. It's using other people's lists. So you've got a real estate agent who has a list, right? Have them email, have them make phone calls. If you have time, help them do it. Using other people's lists will be another way you get more people show up to those events. Again, Dion Begg used to do tons of seminars on this stuff. And what he would do, we both use Zoom webinars. There's lots of programs out there. I just use Zoom. I just like it. And one of the things I could do is I could create a unique link for each referral partner. So if I was up to 50 of them, so I could have a realtor A would have his own unique link and realtor B, so that I could see if they're promoting on their social, I could see who's driving the most traffic to the webinar. So using other people's lists, but if they're going to get a realtor to help you co-promote it, don't just get them to promote it on social, because it's just that, again, if they do, tell them don't use the dang link in their post. Make sure they use the DM strategy, but also get them to email, get them to make phone calls, get them to add the guerrilla marketing in there. All of that stuff layered will fill your webinar. And when you fill your webinar, then you have a chance to actually get some conversations. I know the next kind of step is the follow-up sequence after the webinar. And I didn't think I was going to do it. I'm going to do a part 3. I'm going to do part 3 on some follow-up strategies once the webinar is complete, how to squeeze as much juice as possible out of that orange. And so the next episode coming out, I'll talk about that. So hopefully you find that useful. Quick, I did finish in 12 minutes. Fantastic. So quick recap. Writing the webinar is just the first step. You're at the starting gate for this thing. Just like Dan Kennedy said, it's all about the promotion now, and you've got to promote the heck out of it. And step 1 is email your list and make sure it's more than once. I like starting 10 days before. Step 2, phone your clients and your network and personally invite them. Even if it's a webinar you don't think that they're personally going to attend, they may know people, and they often do, and you will get more people showing up to it. Plus, it's a conversation starter. They're like, you know what? Actually, I want to talk about my mortgage anyway. Oh, dang. Let's talk about your mortgage since I called you to invite you to my webinar. Number 3, promote on social media, but do not put links in the signups. Make sure they DM and make sure that you reply. Number 4 is guerrilla marketing strategy. So email signatures, high profile people, personally invite them to get their feedback with the goal of promoting to their list. Use your Linktree account, which is, you should have one of those if you don't. And then the last is use other people's lists and apply those same 4 strategies to those other people, and your webinars will be full. Hopefully you find that useful. And I know that I've personally had a ton of success with webinars. I've spent a lot of money learning webinars, and I love them. If they're good, I will attend them. And if I get value from them, I always feel like they're worth it. So hopefully you find this useful. As I said, I'm Scott Beckford. This is the I Love Mortgage Brokering podcast. And I'm going to send you to a webinar that I created. So if you want to go check out a webinar that I did, it's called whybricks.com. And on there, I have webinars for people that are, if you're an experienced mortgage broker, we talk about the ways that we help experienced mortgage brokers. And if you're a rookie mortgage broker, we show you how we can help you with that too. I don't always talk about that on every episode, but I figured, hey, I'm going to add it into this episode. So go check that out if you want to see how we do it. And we even have email sequences and stuff. Yes, in the next episode, I'm going to tell you how this follow-up sequence that will double your conversions on the people that attend your webinar. So looking forward to chatting on that one. Thanks again for listening. I will see you on the next episode.